We are here for you, where you live, where you work, where you dream. With our minds focused on the future of this region, we are committed to creating a better life for the present and future generations. That is why we prepared a comprehensive sustainability program and started developing sustainability governance. By signing the UN Principles for Responsible Banking, we have made a pledge to encourage sustainability in the region. Big impact starts with small steps. So in 2020, we continued to reduce electricity consumption and paper usage and have substantially decreased our CO2 emissions related to the use of company cars and Volt vehicles. Future generations depend on us. That is why it's only natural that we act socially responsible. Last year, we supported 274 small local businesses with the #HelpFrame project. We continued to commit to inclusion and equal opportunities in our work environment. That is why we have a zero-tolerance policy to any form of discrimination and violence. At the end of 2020, women represented 56% of all management positions. Of the 307 of new employees, most of them come from local communities. By the end of the year, 4,769 employees have participated in standard internal training programs. Transparency and zero corruption evaluations are our top priorities. That is why we conduct our tax operations in accordance with international standards. We will continue to create a better future for us all. That is why with NLB Group Sustainability Pledge 2025, we commit to fully align our business with UN Principles for Responsible Banking, to carry out our donations and sponsorships performed in accordance with UN Sustainable Development Goals, to continue to lower our carbon footprint directly with paperless business based on digital solutions and remote working, at the same time indirectly through restraining from coal-related business and financing projects related to low-carbon economy, to establish an environmental and social management system as an integral part of our credit approval process, to raise awareness of sustainability in the entire NLB Group and to report relevant environmental and social risks and opportunities. We are happy to share this region with you, because this region is not just a spot on the map. This region is our home. NLB Group, for whatever may come.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching MANIFAIR conference second day and the panel from which we expect a lot since it is quite a new topic, although there is a signal that it is a kind of buzz word or buzz phrase, sustainable banking. We expect much more from this panel than to discuss about fashionable term sustainable banking, because what does it refers to is very dramatic topic, and that is climate changes. Climate changes in banking, and we are asking the question how much more banks could do and financial institutions could do to lessen the effect of climate changes and to help us preserve the planet. I am personally and professionally honored to share the floor with the most distinguished speakers today, Mrs. Francine Pickup, permanent resident of UNDP Serbia, Mrs. Slađana Stradojević, Association of the Banks of Serbia, Mr. Vlastimir Vuković, President of the Executive Board of Komercijalna Banka Serbia. My name is Gordana Ristic. I'm Program Director of MANIFAIR Conference, and I will be your moderator today. So sustainable banking or sustainable finance refers to any form of financial service integrating environmental, social, and governance, so-called ESG, criteria into the business or investment decisions for the lasting benefit of both clients and society at large. Leading financial services providers are slowly realizing the importance of adapting their business practices to meet the most pressing needs of our time. And this includes promoting energy efficiency, making societies more inclusive, and tackling global inequality. Due to their critical role in societies, banks can have an outsized influence on the trajectory of events. Crucially, they are beginning to recognize that sustainability initiatives are not only good for the planet, but are good for the business as well. So usually in this part of the world, we are not, this is not top priority, let's say, or this topic is not yet so put on agenda as the most important, but I think all over the world it must be the most important. But good news is that a lot of funding, a lot of support for the companies which take this right path in the direction of green transition, in direction of green agenda, in the direction of UN SDG. This is going to be supported with also so-called Western Balkans deal fund for such projects. So it is my great pleasure to start and share the floor with Mrs. Francine Pickup, as I said, resident representative UNDP Serbia, and put forward the first question for her, as we know that UNDP is doing many great projects about ecology and sustainability. So Mrs. Pickup, what can be done in order to have more environmental investments and green businesses, especially coming from the private sector, despite the COVID-19 crisis in which we are now?
Thank you, Ms. Ristic. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel. I think this is one of the most important issues facing us today, and I really am committed to looking at how the UN can work more closely with the financial sector to help achieve green transformation. I'd like to answer your question by taking a step back and saying why green investments are so important and why now. Particularly when we're in the midst of a COVID crisis. We may not see it as a priority, as you say, but actually, I think more than a year on, we've focused on the health crisis. We're now looking more and more at the economic aspects of the pandemic. And I think it's really important with our focus on the economy that we don't rush for a recovery of the economy without accounting for this, as you mentioned, this larger looming crisis that could potentially have devastating economic and human impacts, which is of course climate change. And so what we've seen in the last year is that people and institutions have an amazing ability to adjust practically overnight to a change in the situation. And so it's really important that we learn from this crisis that we're all going through, and that we actually invest now in a recovery that is green, so that we build forward better a society and economy that is resilient to future crises like this. So I would say that there is a very narrow window now to change the way we behave, to change the way we engage in economic activity, to really transform the way we live. And for that, we really need to make sure that this recovery is a green one. Why now? Because now, many of us may think that actually the pandemic was good for the environment, right? Because economic activity went down. But in practice, what we're seeing is that greenhouse gas concentrations are at their highest ever levels and are continuing to increase, which is having a big impact on heat, on ice loss, on wildfires that we're seeing around the world, on floods, on droughts, and so on. And this negatively impacts on our food and agriculture production, on our energy production, on our homes and our infrastructure, on our biodiversity, the plants and animals around us, and on our lives. And Serbia needs to be more cautious than anyone, because this region is particularly vulnerable to climate change. In fact, if you look at the temperature rises, the average temperature rise in this region has been higher, much higher than the global average. Our analysis shows that since 2000, Serbia has lost $6 billion because of extreme weather events. The impact on the economy has amounted to about $6 billion. And if we don't act to decarbonize, the cost could be about 11 billion by 2030. So transforming the economy saves money in the long term. And it also ensures that the Serbian economy is more competitive in the future in its biggest export market, which is the EU. So we need, for economic reasons, to change the way the economy is. And the good news, it's good to have some good news. The good news is that there is some signs of political commitment. We saw that the government adopted last month the law on climate change, and will endorse the nationally determined contributions to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 33% by 2030, which is a big rise in ambition from previous commitments. And the government is also, with the support of UNDP, developing its first national climate change action plan, which is trying to mitigate the impacts of climate change on the economy. But despite these efforts, we still need to address the issue of financing, and we need the financing for the green investments. Now, typically in times of crisis, we look to the public sector to come up with the financing, right? But
for everything.
But we strongly believe in the importance of the private sector in coming up with and providing the solutions for environment and climate change. We conducted a study with the European Union delegation, which is due to be out very, very shortly in the coming weeks, which looked at the
exclusive, I would say.
Exclusive. And we came up with, we looked into the viability of different financing options for green investments. We surveyed 160 micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, the backbone of the Serbian economy. And we found out that basically enterprises are willing to invest in energy efficiency and environment, but they still face barriers to doing so. These barriers are primarily lack of capital, insufficient skills, insufficient information around green technology and the financial products that are available, and inadequate support from the regulatory environment. And so we suggest, and I'll finish quickly on this, 3 main areas for assistance to the private sector to ensure that green transformation takes place. So the first area is about strengthening regulations. Regulations should support rather than constrain enterprises in going green. So administrative requirements need to be simple. They need to be not time consuming, clear, requiring minimum documentation. Then regulations there needs to be a stable financial framework that is predictable, so the regulatory framework can't keep changing. And then as well as these carrots, there also need to be some sticks, right? And so the sticks would be eco taxes linked to the polluter pays principle, and subsidies on fossil fuels and other polluting industries should be phased out in a socially acceptable manner. And then, for example, another very concrete example, heating costs should be calculated based on what you consume and not the area that you occupy. So these are some concrete examples. Second main area is access to finance, where businesses really need more support. So here the Green Deal and the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans is a real game changer. There's going to be lots more money pumped in. And so Serbia needs to have the pipeline of enterprises to be able to absorb and take advantage of those funds. From UNDP's perspective, what we try and do is build up that pipeline of enterprises that is ready to absorb some of these new funds that are becoming available. So we provide seed funding to help enterprises grow, and we've used that model to catalyze private sector funding. We've mobilized more than 40 million with the support of Sweden and the Global Environment Facility, so that these enterprises can then access private funding, both in terms of loans and other investments. And through these kinds of work, we're creating green jobs and we're reducing greenhouse gases. And then the third area where we think more support is needed is in terms of education and training. So in many areas in countries in Europe now, we're seeing that banks are providing more favorable loans to sustainable companies, and they're educating their clients on how to become sustainable. Here in Serbia, what we're doing is we're working with the Chambers of Commerce to establish this circular economy hub, which is really, again, about providing training and advice to businesses who are trying to move from a more linear to a more circular economy model. So those would be the three main areas that we see as important for shifting towards a more green transformation.
Thank you very much for this substantial answer from which we could learn a lot. And learning is very connected with the strategies of resilience we must have in this crisis of COVID. And actually, I believe that if we work hard, a bit harder, we could go out of this crisis better than we were entering into it. It applies for all the crises, it's general model. But let me ask you another very important question, because this panel's name is Sustainable Banking and Finances. My question for you, Mrs. Pickup, is what could be the role of the banks and the financial institutions in this green transformation of private sector? How could bank, apart from giving loans? This is quite a conservative. I'm sure there is much more to it.
Well, I think financing is the main way the financial sector can contribute. But I do see the financial sector as a critical partner for achieving green transformation. And as you said at the beginning, we need to stop seeing green transformation or sustainable development goals just as a cost. It's really, I mean, we talk about the SDGs as $1 trillion investment opportunity. And many, many financial institutions around the world are now seeing that, you know, from sovereign wealth funds to pension funds to angel investors to commercial banks and development banks. And so the financial sector plays a critical role. When it comes to international financial institutions, they play a critical role in terms of obviously providing lending and providing things like credit guarantees, which can absorb some of the risk, increase the appetite for risk of some of the commercial banks. And then what we see in Serbia is that the financial sector, and my colleagues can speak much more to this than me, but the financial sector is very bank-centric here and relatively underdeveloped. And it means that the commercial banks do have a critical and strategic role on the market in terms of providing lending. And so typically, whether an IFI will channel its financing for the green agenda through commercial banks. So this means that commercial banks really take on a very, very critical role in ensuring green transformation. Now, around the world, we see that many banks have now incorporated sustainability into their ways of working. So they provide loans, not just based on risk and return on investment, but also based on sustainability criteria. Our analysis from our study that I mentioned earlier has shown that MSMEs here in Serbia generally don't turn to banks for loans, primarily because they don't trust the system. And also they have very limited information. They're not informed about the types of loans that banks can offer. And so they look to other sources for investment funds. At the same time, the range of financial instruments that are available are pretty limited to deposits and loans, which limits access to finance for entrepreneurs. And we also see that banks in general are not very proactive, looking very hard for those new kinds of MSMEs which are making the green investments. They're typically relying on their existing clients. Moving to the future, I think there is a common understanding that there is a huge opportunity with regard to green investments, both in terms of the scale of those investments and the types of projects that will be looking for those investments. And we do see in Serbia that commercial banks, including the leading banks, are promoting environmentally friendly technologies. They're investing in energy efficiency, and they are phasing out financing to companies that are generating revenues based on fossil fuels. And these are good changes that we're seeing. So overall, I think there's a lot more that we can do together in Serbia as the UN and the financial sector to really help this shift happen and help MSMEs to access financing to really invest in this transformation that we need here.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pickup. This was really enlightening speech or the information you have shared with us. We will work on it in future on many aspects. And if someone or you yourself wondered why I put you on the panel with the bankers, I don't think you wondered, because you know how important it is to have bankers who understand sustainable development, who have it in their strategy. And that's why we have put on this panel with great honor, Mr. Vlastimir Vukovic, President of the Executive Board of Komercijalna Banka from Serbia, which, as you probably know, was bought by NLB Bank Slovenia, and with the experience of one European bank and a strong and a big tradition of a commercial bank, I think they will do a lot of sustainable projects. But I'm not a speaking person of commercial bank. That's why I'm calling Mr. Vlastimir Vukovic to join the panel and to tell us if he believes that the recovery of particularly small and medium-sized enterprises will be easier with the program from the domain of sustainable banking and finance. Mr. Vukovic.
Thank you very much, Gordana. It is a great pleasure to be here with you. I think this is one of the most important topics for all of us, not just the bankers, but as the citizens of Serbia, citizens of Europe and world. So we need to be more focused on very important activities like a sustainable production and sustainable business, to go greener, not to not to have the pollution. You are aware that in Belgrade we have most polluted air in whole world. So this is the problem which we all who live and work in Serbia and the region suffer. This is also situation if you look also in Bosnia or Macedonia, this is the same problems. But what we could do, I think that the banks are a responsible player and that we need to be more focused on sustainable business. And this is not just the banks. We need to have also governmental, non-governmental organization, companies, financial sectors, and individuals. We need to be in a way somewhere in the center and to provide, for example, for SME companies you mentioned, this is a vital part of economy in Serbia as well, in all the region where NLB Group is operating. We need to support them in order to integrate the sustainable development goals into their development plans. This is maybe easier to say, but sometimes short goals and short achievement overtake over the strategy and the sustainability. We need to be there to advocate this, because I will give you one example from our sister bank. We have in NLB Belgrade one very important activity. This is organic for the farmers. We have each and every years organizing for the best project in organic producers for agriculture. We give the rewards. What we learn from that is that it is 10 times harder to produce in organic way than in conventional way. Of course, I think at least 1 from 100 succeed in this business. But this is very important to promote this, and we as a group and as a bank have this project, and I think something which is unique, and we would like to have this also together in Komercijalna banka and NLB Belgrade as a very important project. We need to go green. And you know that Slovenia is the second country of the coverage of forest in Europe. First in Norway, second is Slovenia. So I would personally like also in Serbia to have more green instead of having plastic pollution and everything what you see in our forest. So also we could talk about this, but very important is to see that we are operating now in the COVID time. For our customers, it's very important to give them some kind of hope. As a bank, for example, Komercijalna banka, what we see that the working conditions have changed. So people move from working in the offices, working from home. For example, in Komercijalna banka, in the head office, we have more than 70% of our employees working from home. This is also the new reality, and this shows us that it is possible also to see each other during this Zoom conference, and we are not present in the same room. And this is possible also to have the people all over the world in the same place. So in that respect, we think that decrease in also carbon dioxide emission is possible because people don't travel to work with the cars. They're staying in their homes, and this is also one of the changing and the game changer which has happened today. The second one is digitalization. It is not good to say that COVID has some good impacts, but I could say that digitalization and moving very fast to digitalize Serbia and also to digitalize companies and the people is very important. From March to March, if we compare year to year in our bank, we have increase of 37% of actively users of digital services in our bank. This is a really significant number. So in that respect, we promote this with the companies. Yes, a lot of companies already working in digital, but now we need to provide more and more services. This is the what we could do for our customers and also to the society. So to move toward the digital and also to show that we are also for different ways of helping SMEs. I think that the position of Komercijalna banka and NLB Group as a regional player and systemic player in all countries when we are positioning is very important also to connect the companies in different countries. Very important is to establish the good environment to cooperate with each other and to have easy transition of goods, people, and services. In that respect, Komercijalna banka and NLB Group is the right partner for the SME companies who operate all over the place, all over the ex-Yugoslavia. And I think this is no borders to the people, no borders to the goods. It's very important to us to have the easy transition. And we as a bank and systematic institution will provide to our customers better tariffs, better conditions. What Francis said is very important. Yes, we are a financial institution. We are the bank. We will provide this. But also to have easy access to your accounts in a different country in our bank is much easier than to go through the different banks, to go to some SWIFTs, to correspondent banking. It's very easy. One click and your money is on your account in our bank in, for example, Bosnia or Macedonia. So this is what we could do for our companies. And I think this is the chance to regroup ourselves. I said that whoever thinks that the COVID will be the short-term, I don't know how to say about COVID, the short-term accident, this is not true. So we saw that we are 1 year within the COVID, and most probably we will have more to go. And in that respect, we need to prepare ourselves and our customers for the new future, which will be different from what we see today. Different working environment, different office spaces, different needs, and full digitalization. So in that respect, I think that the banks need to support the customers to look ahead, to look what will the future be. And we as a Komercijalna banka and NLB Group are here to support our customers, the society, and individuals.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vukovic. I could not agree more with you when you said that COVID crisis was a kind of catalyst of digitalization in all aspects, but especially, I would say, in financial services. So as the leading banking group in the region, I suppose you have some permanent strategy regarding sustainable banking and what would help intensify the activities in this area.
Yes, of course, we have our 5 years group sustainability strategy until 2025. And I'm very proud to say that in each and every country, including Serbia, we already have this program installed in our banks. Also, we have the people who pass the special training in order to provide social and environmental policy in our banks, and to support all activities in the way that we provide ESG or environmental, social, and governance matters. So for us, this is not just a matter of doing the business and making the profit. For us, we are here to stay. So we are a regional player. We live here. We work here. We sleep here. So we are completely for this region, and we need to show more. In that respect, I think what I said, our DNA is to provide our customers and our employees safe and secure place for work and place for business 24/7. Digitalization, as you mentioned, Gordana, very well, is something which is necessity. This is not some gadgets which you have. This is necessity for all of us. In that respect, we are fully opened for the new initiatives which could come from government, non-government, and individuals in order to support community with better services in banking, finance, and also advisory. I'm proud to say that in last year we launched Health Frame project. Health Frame project is the project when we supported a local small business and address this through the promotion of their business through advertisement and advertisement time in TV, in digital, and to promote their services through our frame, Health Frame. I think this is very important because you have some very creative small industries and small companies, and they don't have enough money to promote themselves and to show what they're capable to do. I think that our obligation is to promote them and to show to the public that they're live and they are here and that they have the partner. And we are partner for those companies all over the place. I mentioned also organic, and we will have much more to give to our community, because I think that together we need to have the paperless society, not to waiting on the counters. We want to have the bank, I always said, with a digital bank, but with human touch. People love to interact with each other, but it is possible to interact in this way. So to have a video chat, to have someone who could call and to have advice for very important things in your life. Whenever you want, for example, to go into some real estate or some investments, you need to talk with the humans. I think that we are here also to provide this 24/7 through the video chat, through the contact centers, and also with the physical footprint. But with mixture of this, for you, Gordana, if you want, for example, I don't know, in 10 o'clock to discuss regarding something, and you saw advertisement about new building which are built in New Belgrade, for example, and you would like to have the flat there, you could call most probably within some very near future your advisor in the bank, in the contact center, and to discuss with this. This is the future, and I think for us this is must have, and this is sustainability as well.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Vukovic, this is sustainability, financial sustainability, and sustainability embraces many aspects. And I think digital transformation in Serbia has given very good results, and we are very quick in comparison with much more developed countries. And don't take me wrong that I'm a little bit proud of that. I hope we will pick up with ecological aspects as well soon. I have left Mrs. Slađana Sredojević for the end, but as we say in English, last but not the least, very important aspect, very interesting lady whose titles I'm going to read now because I cannot memorize all of them. So I said Slađana is from the Association of the Banks of Serbia, Vice President in the EU Banking Training Network from Brussels, and specialist for the international cooperation, IFIs, and education. So education, you have mentioned, Mrs. Pickup has mentioned as well, and you have mentioned as one of the pillars, one of the most important aspects of support of sustainable agenda. Mrs. Sredojević, sustainable development will introduce new values and principles, but also new financial products. New financial products, credit lines, and so on. As Banking Association representative, do you believe that such financial products are necessary in order to support further development of green and sustainable economy, and why? Would such an introduction of the new credit lines require any reconditions, such as international financial institution support or any other factor?
Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for great introduction.
Thank you for sharing the panel.
Thank you. You hear me? Yes.
I'm with you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for the invitation for the conference and for the panel, and thank you for the question. Dear colleagues, panelists, dear participants that you are following us, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is also my great pleasure to represent today Banking Association and the European Association for Training on such an important topic of this conference. Yes, we do believe in banking association, banking sector, that values principles and financial products related to official introduction of sustainability in banking sector will additionally help our banks in their already existing efforts to finance growth, jobs and economy directly, and also through capital markets that they also do and support. Concept of sustainable financing that came actually officially as a concept is a set of various instruments and methodologies that will take into consideration environmental, social and governmental aspects in the investment decision-making process, and it will lead to increased investments in long-term and sustainable activities that then create added value in a number of sectors. Because it introduces two new imperatives for business. First, contribution of financing to sustainable and inclusive growth by financing the long-term needs of society. And here we have the emphasis on long-termism that was really weighted for such a time. And the second, strengthening financial stability by including ESG in investment decisions as qualitative impact on society. To answer another part of your question, why it is needed and what are the factors that will enable it, we see many factors that complement relationship between banking and sustainable development. So let me start with concept of various international platforms that actually brought the culture of sustainable development into the banks. Actually, culture of sustainable development has been more or less already present in banking sector because it is the part of various banking policies for many years already, and they gradually were raising awareness and building up the capacity of banking sector to deal today with Green Deal, Agenda 2030 and implementation of 17 SDGs and other internationally agreed goals and global agenda. Some of them are using, for instance, non-credit support to local communities and to particular social goals, supporting green approach in internal policy of banks, particular target groups among employees or other population, etc. This policy we all know as corporate social responsibility that actually was kind of the initial stage in this culture shift. And later was supported by other initiatives with strong culture impact, but also business impact. Here I put the emphasis because today we don't talk anymore about CSR when we talk about sustainable development. It's a strong business impact, and other international platforms help banks like Principle for Responsible Investment, Principle for Responsible Banking, and many others. That is why today banking sector is fully capable to understand its role and to be a reliable partner to government, donors, IFIs, and other stakeholders in implementing SDGs and the other agenda that we mentioned together now in the panel. Second factor that we see important is the factor of regulation that appeared later on, coming mostly from European domain, from European Commission. Actually, as a colleague, Mrs. Pickup mentioned, it was the call for private sector to support the global agenda of such global goals, to finance development goals, and openly to transform the financing as we have had, starting from the action plan for financing sustainable growth in 2018, through the European Green Agreement 2019, adopted taxonomy regulation in July last year, to the consultations on the preparation of sustainable financing strategy, also in July 2020. So with these main pillars, let's say, regulation in this area is being harmonized. And we considered in banking sector that it further strengthens the capacity of banking sector and diversity of financial supply that will sooner or later appear also in local markets. Therefore, this harmonized regulation is both the foundation, but also the incentive for further development of the financial market and instruments intended for green and circular economy, both in EU countries and countries outside the EU, including our country, Serbia. A third factor are banks themselves, and of course, other market participants in capital markets and similar segments of financial markets. They have an important role of being the partner in the period of so-called not only financing the green projects, but also transitions towards a circular and green economy. And they are committed to provide such an offer that helps clients to become green instead of only financing projects that already have elements of sustainable and green in their basis. This is their important role as well. And beside known direct financial support that is dedicated to finance projects with strong environmental and social impact, like already mentioned energy efficiency projects, renewable energy projects, concessions, etc., we believe that sustainable financing will introduce new financial instruments. For instance, green bonds are relatively new and fast-growing phenomena in international financial markets. It is quite certain that the domestic banking and financial market will enrich its offer of loans, but also other financial products that support the transformation towards a circular and green economy. And eventually, let me also pick up the last factor that we see at the moment very important, the role of our partners. Like you mentioned in your questions, international financial institutions. Catalyzing role of international financial institutions is very important, as well as their coordination and complementarity. Here we may add not only international financial institutions, but the whole set of organizations, international organizations. Many international financial institutions have already upgraded their long-term climate strategies and financing policies, as we have heard, for example, yesterday in our conference from EIB and EBRD directly during the panel number 2. So it is obvious that this impact is twofold and irreversible, with a strong credit potential in one hand, but also the new logic of market risk assessment and project evaluation in general at the other hand. It is understood that banks that already have cooperation with some IFIs in certain related segments, like energy efficiency and similar, will have, of course, direct know-how and other support. In banking association and banking sector, there is no doubt, as other colleague mentioned also, no doubt that all other banks in our market, regardless whether they cooperate with IFIs or not, that they will follow such a system. They already do. Why do we believe in that? Namely, beside the earlier efforts in financing growth, driven by the challenges of the financial crisis and post-COVID period particularly, banking sector is already titled and invited to be the part of the solution and not of the problem towards a greener and more sustainable economy. So redirecting private capital to more sustainable investments will lead to a more comprehensive change in the way that also financial system works, which is a monetary process to achieve more sustainable economic growth, ensure the stability of the financial system, and encourage greater transparency and long-term economy. If you allow me, I would stop here with mentioning the factors. Of course, there are much more of them, as well as stakeholders that are helping this process. But for this question, I would stop here.
This actually, your brilliant insights on sustainable development and the role of banks brings me to another thought, that when we speak about sustainability because of dramatic potential crisis with climate, we forget that it refers also to lessening of poverty and as well to inclusiveness and gender rights, human rights. I hope we will not forget that. We will include all of it in our recovery process from COVID crisis, as well as innovations. So what was really brilliant on this conference all through, and including this estimated panel, is the speakers. So with that potential, I'm not worried at all that we can come out of crisis quicker. But as I understood that everything is interconnected, innovation, fintech, banks adapting to new way, digitalized way, and sustainable banking, all of it is connected and all of it is part of the chain to reverse the global warming, hopefully. So, Mrs. Sredović, thank you very much. Once again, I would like to ask you another question. Although many initiatives and legislation have been made in the field of green and sustainable financing, and many new activities are to be done in the future period. We are at the beginning. What would you emphasize as particularly important for banking sector in the future period, both from the local perspective and the European perspective, having in mind that you are also representative of European Association in Training and Financial Services?
Thank you very much for connecting us all at the end with this question of education emphasis. As my colleagues panelists, Mrs. Pikap and Mr. Vukovic already also mentioned, they also gave important views in this direction, as well as you as moderator, which I fully share, absolutely. One of the important goals that the European Commission, for instance, in the field of sustainable financing disclosed during the consultation on preparation on sustainable finance strategy last year was the increasing opportunities for citizens, financial institutions and corporates to enhance sustainability by mobilizing retail investors and citizens, and B, promoting sustainable finance globally. This, let me also share another example. It happened actually yesterday during our first day of the conference, when International Monetary Fund hosted exactly yesterday the IMF high-level seminar on green finance and climate policy, and they disclosed following data in a recent survey of 425 investors with 25 trillion in assets under management. The results are following. 53% cited the poor quality or availability of ESG data and analytics as the biggest barrier to deeper and broader implementation of sustainable investing. Furthermore, Managing Director Mrs. Georgieva, yesterday during the speech on securing a green recovery, the economic benefits from tackling climate change, said on the same occasion, domestically, countries need to set up environmental information disclosures, green finance standard systems, and other support policies to mobilize more private sector investment. I wanted to share with you these, let's say, two directions, two examples. What is the message for us also in the European Association for Training, where we are all dealing with education in financial services sector are active. With these considerations in mind, many new activities are to be done in the future period, obviously, to support directly further raising awareness on the complexity of the sustainable finance, but also the education of general public and market participants as well. The European Banking Training Association, as the united voice of providers of vocational education and training in the financial industry, an international network of banking institutes, which is based in Brussels and gather 42 institutes, Center for Bank Training. We are jointly developing various initiatives aimed to education of bank employees, but also current and potential users of financial services, like young people. And we assume, observing local conditions in these 42 institutes all over the world, we assume that further action could go in the following directions. First is education and awareness for employees in banks and financial services sector. So developing of training materials, introduction of the proper qualifications, competencies, and skills for employees in financial services sector, both for front and back offices. Due to lack of the global approach in this domain, it is also important to globally share best practices exactly through this kind of business associations as we are, and education and training on issues related to sustainability from the point of view of various aspects like environmental protection, ESG, regulation in sustainable finance, risk perception of measurement, non-financial reporting, impact investing, etc. Mr. Vukovic, I think, mentioned more of them related to SMEs financing, for instance. If the commercial front office staff, for example, is not sufficiently trained, sooner or later, at the short term, lack of competencies will become more visible because discussion with the customer need to be proper discussion to understand the need of the customer and to feel them. On the other hand, retail and institutional professional investors needs proper support as well. And principle of responsible investing as the international initiative are great example of investor awareness and dedication to apply ESG in their own and their client investments. Therefore, development of training programs and competencies is important and needed more than ever, in our opinion. That is why in EBTN we support exchange of best practices and also the standards in training in this domain. And we are developing various projects, of course. And another approach, another segment that we are interested in and active is education and awareness of general public through financial literacy programs. In the current context caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, it is more than before needed to connect with the needs of citizens and business to understand how best to engage them in the transition. Clear communication and education to gain understanding of critical requirements is really needed to ensure resilience both of individual, but also of the economy and society, including the impact on job market at the end. And to fulfill that, education and financial education would be precondition for this dialogue and proper understanding of sustainable finance as a concept. Understanding at the side of the client. These are all important segments where education can really give a huge contribution. That is why we banking institutes and banking associations all over the world, we integrate subject of sustainable finance immediately together with all other subcategories and terminology in our existing programs of financial education, for example, of citizens, of young population, and there are several initiatives where we do it. European Money Week, Global Money Week, European Money Quiz, that we do together under the umbrella of European Banking Federation, for instance. So we are globally connected. This is my last message for this question. So the message is being globally connected, being in a partnership with others, and so more partnerships and the role of institutions and the coherent actions at the global level would be my final message, because due to the diversified ecosystems of institutions helping legislation, benchmarks, guidelines, ratings, and other segments of sustainable finance, we also consider that it is really worth to understand each other and to work together to simply synchronize. Private sector and private association play a really important role, as I've mentioned, also in this international domain. As you mentioned, obviously, we are a member of European Banking Training Network that I represent also today. But also recently, I would like to disclose with you another similar example of enlarging our international network by becoming the membership Association of Serbian Banks, becoming the member of the Sustainable Banking Network of the International Financial Corporation, for instance, which is a great international network comprising exactly of the banking industry, banking associations, trying to, it's a voluntary community, trying to commit countries and banks members to advancing sustainable finance in line with international good practice. We recently became member, and we are very enthusiastic about what we can do together with other members in this network. And this is only the trigger for us, further trigger to continue supporting our banks and other stakeholders, as I have mentioned, IFIs, donor community and organizations, but also regulator, governments, public policy makers. So altogether, we are really ready and targeted to very practically and very measurable achieve some common goals. I'm available if you have any other question, but this was really great question to send my message.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful insight and unique experience you are bringing on this panel, Mrs. Radojevic. I would like to point out that I'm totally aware of the moment in which we are doing this conference. Perhaps people are thinking maybe it's not polite to speak about money and the future of money, where we have such loss of human lives. But money can bring a lot of good things in terms of vaccines, medicine, reducing of poverty, and all depends on our system of values. I hope in the future, the system of values, when we mention money, will not be some kind of luxury, and the biggest respect would be driven by those who help the ones in need. And the biggest marketing, either for the bank or for the corporation, would be of those who help the communities worldwide tackling these problems like health issues, poverty issues, inclusiveness. And it seems to me that resilience is coming exactly from this human approach. Although we are speaking about digitalization of financial and banking sector, I see on the horizon humanization. And for that, I am personally inspired to continue on the next Money Fair and to help in any way, because the time of conflicts and the old matrix is gone. Now we are facing the time of cooperation. We must reach each other's hand and cooperate if we want to get over the crisis of COVID-19 quicker and safer. Thank you once more for sharing this panel with us. Mr. Vukovic, next time we will see how much you have put in green projects. Be aware that I will not forget your promises and promises of Mrs. Radojevic. I have recorded all of it. Mrs. Pickup, thank you very much for such an inspiring speech and insight you have shared with us, and for your time as well. I hope it will not end here. We will continue to fight, each of us in our fields, because we have a lot to do in these times. Thank you once more, and see you on some next occasion, Money Fair.